1 John chapter 4. Beloved, do not trust every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they belong to God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you can know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges Jesus Christ come in the flesh belongs to God. And every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus does not belong to God. This is the spirit of the AntiChrist, that, as you heard, is to come, but in fact is already in the world. You belong to God, children, and you have conquered them. For the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. They belong to the world. Accordingly, their teaching belongs to the world, and the world listens to them. We belong to God, and anyone who knows God listens to us, while anyone who does not belong to God refuses to hear us. And this is how we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of deceit. But dear friends, each time I read these passages and similar, such as 2 Thessalonians, which you can go to, that I believe parallels this, it's like reading tomorrow's news. To me, that describes exactly the situation we're in. 2,000 years ago, John is saying that the Antichrist is in the world already. The spirit of the Antichrist is in the world already. They're hearing about this, but had not manifest, but was in the world then. And he's showing us how we can tell the difference. Because if we do not understand or grab hold of the reality that the one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world, no matter what that world system is that is Antichrist, we will not be effective in even living our Christian life, even on a personal level, let alone making a difference to the rest of the world. And yet God has ordained by your baptismal rite to do exactly that, to change this world. Many years ago, the Lord spoke to me, and I was asking him all sorts of questions at the time, but what he said is more important than my questions. He said, Eddie, if you want to change the world, change yourself. If you want to change the world, change yourself. Well, strange enough, I started to do that, best I could, best I knew how at the time. And one of the things that would happen is that I had a very foul mouth before I was a Christian. I mean, every second word was a 4-letter word that described just about everything, and consequently didn't have much of a vocabulary, and had quite a reputation one way or the other, which was not that savoury. But I had staff working for me. Now, that was my world. My world was the few people that worked for me, my family, and a few group of friends and clients. That would be my world. Wasn't a lot of people if you added them all up. But they were all influenced and affected by my talent, my personality, and everything else. And I had a lot of admirers, I must say, professionally. But I had an attitude problem. Deep down, I had an attitude problem. And so the Lord required that I should change. And he said, so if you want to change the world, so I'm saying, oh Lord, the world's in a mess. And he's saying, but if you want to change the world, change yourself. And what first thing that began to happen, I realized that by using superlatives for just about everything, and Jesus Christ was one of them, and a whole lot of 4-letter words to describe everything good, bad, and indifferent, I decided that I would stop swearing. I would stop my foul language. I had a terrible negative sense of humor, and still fall back into that sometimes, and some people don't know I'm joking, but it can be a problem. So that had to change. That negativity to me was funny, but it wasn't, if somebody didn't catch on, it wasn't really funny. It was still a put down somehow. And I didn't understand that. I thought it was just hugely funny. But you add that to these things. I mean, a lot of what came out of my mouth in those ways weren't very good. So I decided, okay, I'm going to stop swearing. It was quite difficult to do. But you know, the first thing I found, I couldn't speak English. I actually, if I was angry, for example, I couldn't call upon the superlatives to express myself. I had to find real words, and that was hard. If I wanted to say something was great, you know, I wouldn't be able to use a four-letter word to say it was great. I have to find a proper expression. And so, and that was quite a challenge. I actually, for the first time in my life, I think I learned to speak English. And that was great. But what began to happen was as the 4 or 5 people that worked for me at that time in that particular studio began to see the change in me, because they could hear me talking about Jesus a lot, but a lot of things hadn't changed. But when they saw that and they realized that I was changing, it began to have a better impact on them. You know, me saying, oh yeah, you know, Jesus is Lord and all that sort of stuff was great, but I was not fulfilling it in my mouth and in a lot of my deeds. So once I began to change that, it kind of added some force to what I was saying. Consequence of that was the atmosphere in the whole place changed a lot more. I didn't realize that some of my staff actually didn't like me using that kind of language. I thought everybody did anyway. I just never thought about it. And so the atmosphere actually changed. A consequence of that was 2 of them actually got baptized as Catholics. I would take them up to New Norcia for a weekend and try to get them dunked before they got back on Monday morning. So, but 2 of them actually did. But a lot of it was directly to do, not so much because I said what I believed, but they could see me at least making an effort into changing myself rather than keeping telling them how they needed to change. And so in that way, my little world changed. So I began to see that you can change yourself, you can begin to change the world. Now, the world, now James is saying that we must understand with the way the world is and has been all the time anyway, just phase of its evil and everything else that goes on with it in its humanity and things, is to realize that the one, as he says, in you is greater than what is in the world. Who's the one in you who is greater? Christ, yeah? The Trinity, yeah? Okay, the Holy Spirit, the power of God in you is greater than the spirit that is in the world. But you know, whilst we are very individual and private about our faith, we're going to be pretty lonely in trying to change the world on our own. We're dealing with this kind of thing as we find in 2 Timothy 3. It says, but understand this, there will be terrifying times in the last days. There will be. And we're seeing them. People will be self-centered, and we're seeing that. They'll be lovers of money, and we see that. They're proud, they're haughty, they're abusive. And we see a lot of that even more increasingly. They're disobedient to their parents. And that is becoming the Generation X thing, isn't it, really? Disobedient to their parents. They're ungrateful, irreligious, callous, implacable, slanderous, licentious, brutal, hating what is good, traitors, reckless. This is terrible, isn't it? The lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, as they make a pretense of religion but deny its power. Pretense of religion, I would look at that and say, yeah, a lot of people want what religion has to offer, but they do not want a person. Okay? Now, I've been involved over my time because of being in marketing and things like that. There was an organization in Perth some years ago called Focal Universal. And Focal Universal was one of these motivational people. They take you out on a weekend and charge you thousands and thousands of dollars to rip you apart and strip you down to nothing, get you groveling on the floor and then rebuild you back up again into a new person. All with this positive thinking stuff and all of this stuff that you see Tony Robbins doing and all these people that have become very popular. Well, I used to do some marketing for them. But I noticed, because I never got involved in it, but I did notice that a lot of those things, these motivational stuff that you get from the sort of pseudo-religious or new agey type of thing, is using the Bible but not mentioning it. I know because I know my Bible, I can tell what they're doing. They're using all sorts of things from religions, the various religions, and applying them to these techniques which they charge you an awful lot of money for.